So how long have you been here?
Well, I came in on the first day, so 4 weeks ago today, 450 people or thereabouts trucked in here and set up a camp. And now 4 weeks later, we've got an up and running community, which people from the United Nations, pensioners associations, Stonehenge campaign, critical mass, they're all visit us now because we're on the map. And what I saw is that in 4 weeks we've actually put a blip out on the international networks to the extent that people are obliged to actually come and check us out and see what we're doing. On an individual basis, it's fascinating who comes in here. One guy who's like a local resident from an estate down the road, and he was at a party the first week we were here, and somebody said to him, oh, there's some new age travellers have moved in that site down York Road. And he went, oh, I'll see you later. And he went to get his bike to get on down here, and his mate came after him and said, oh, I wouldn't go down there, you know what those people are like, blah, blah. And he went, oh, but I know those people, I've seen them at Glastonbury Festival, you haven't been to Glastonbury Festival. So he got his bike down here, and he's been here ever since. And he goes home for a few hours now and then. And he's a key holder and that, but I'm really struck by people who basically have the bottle to come in here because, and Simon was walking down the road, and some young local guys come up to him and said, are you from the site on York Road? And he said, yeah. And they shook his hand and they said, you're working class heroes. And it's the same day somebody else from here went to sign on and gave this as the address, and the dole officer said, oh, we hear that that's the place where you will give over 10% of your dole money to your leader. So those two things were in the same day, the working class hero and 10% of our money to our leader, which is an interesting one.
You know when people come up to the gate, they're a bit unsure whether or not they want to come in, you know, what's that, what do you think is going through their head, and how are they encouraged to come in and have a look around?
Well, it's an interesting one because it seems to me that a fair percentage of people come because they know somebody or they feel likely to know somebody here. And then there are those people who just see it on TV and have got to get down here because they like to be where things are happening and they see something is happening. And so they come and stay a week. So people seem to find it very hard to leave once they've actually come in here.
And what kind of people have been visiting?
Absolutely every sort. It's one of those things where you could never say what it is that brings all these different people from totally different backgrounds and expectations and experience into the same place. And I noticed also that there are certain people who are drawn to these places because it's an easy place to live. They last about 3 days. They get pissed off because so many of us here are on a project, we're on a mission, and people are willing to say, look, you can't do that here, this is not what we're about. And some of them stayed for about 3 days, and then they said, oh, we're going off now because there are better squats in London, you know. And it was like this was a bit hard for them, and they didn't really fancy it. And so that level of turnover, which is why it hasn't turned into a totally lunched out site, because there definitely are enough people present who are not willing to see it trashed. And that isn't just a squat, and it isn't a traveller site in the normal sense of the word. So I think we're winning that battle, which is the one that always, you know, undermines everything we do, like the Rainbow Centre and stuff. It gets undermined by the fact that people can say, oh, but it's a squat. You can't tell me what to do, and you can't call the police. So basically,
Hello.
Hi, Hilary.
How are you?
Excellent.
Oh, sorry. You're doing interviews.
Oh, you're part.
Yeah, we
So,
talked
what
about
else?
squatting. I mean, do you think it's like a bit of an extension of throwaway society where people, when they're squatting, they think they can kind of abuse it?
Oh yeah.
Use the space.
Yeah. They have no respect for the space because they haven't done anything to have the space. Yeah, they haven't worked for it, they haven't built it, they haven't done anything. And I mean, it's part of the institutionalized society as well, that you grow up, there's school or there's children's homes or there's reform schools or prisons or whatever. So people get severely institutionalized in the sense that they do expect meals on the table and, you know, money for beer as well, and that's unusual. That's peculiar to our culture and our generation, this generation, who expect everything. But what I notice is that a lot of people are really getting turned on by having to do their own. Yeah, there was Rob there pushing cart with big flagons of water just to give himself a bath. He was saying, what a lot of effort just to have a bath. But that's how simple it is for us normally, and that's how we take it for granted, that there's always a bath and hot water, and that's all very well, but it also means that the guys at the electricity department have to provide the electricity and monitor everything and work so that you can get your electricity to heat your water to have your bath. And then there's the guys who work in the sewage department who have to dispose of all that, and it's a very interesting one about who gets to work and who doesn't, and who's got the rights. Because obviously workers who are willing to go and take care of the sewage and providing people with the electricity are entitled to get paid for it, because I wouldn't want to do it, nor would you. It's the way I see it. And all the ones who are drinking beer, you know, and thinking they have the right, but someone has to actually make the beer and make the cans and put it in and export it and sell it, and those people are regarded as nowhere because they work and do all that and worry about their mortgages.
What happens to time when you're on a site like this? I mean, in the time it takes you to boil a kettle for a cup of tea here, you could have had 5 at home by just flicking there. That's like an example of the way time is, like, it takes a lot longer.
Yeah, everything is a major thing, and you can be going off to get the water for your cup of tea, and something occurs that has to be dealt with there and then. Somebody comes over, I've got, like Terry did the other day, I was in the middle of doing something and Terry comes over saying he's got a coachload of pensioners outside and he needs the key because they can't walk in over the rubble, they need to be driven in. So then I've got to go and find the key and then see them in, and then there's a whole reception for all these elderly pensioners, which has to be dealt with there and then because they're there. And then maybe 2 hours later you get back to what you were doing. But real life was like that before we all got time warped, basically, by having to appear at certain times, and real life was like that.
And here it's, you know, it's less stressful. I mean, everywhere else there's less time. You always seem like you need more time.
Yeah.
Everyone's rushing around anyway,
Right.
saving time.
But here there is copious quantity of time, which can be, and you never really have to think what you're going to do with it, because it all happens on the hoof, as it were.
So what would you say was the best bit about this whole situation here?
I guess just the freedom to come and live our natural lives. Every night before I go to sleep, I visualise a map of London and actually place us, because we're in a tipi, which means you could be anywhere on the planet. It's like a little spaceship. And when I come out in the morning, I recall that I'm actually, you know, deep in London on this massive historic sort of river. And that's magic, basically. And I don't feel threatened by bailiffs or evictions, simply because we set ourselves up here to actually invoke the full powers of, you know, the patriarchs, to see what they would do next. And after Newbury and everything, this is a doddle in comparison.
And there's no real preparations for evictions. I mean, it's everyone's keeping focused on the, you know.
You only can stay focused on the day, because the moment you start thinking about evictions, your daily life ceases, because you're thinking about eviction. That's what I notice.
You're thinking about the end. And
Yes, that's right. Which means you can't function.
Yeah.
Which in a way is their psychological thing of getting a possession order, which means you're always under threat. But actually that keeps things live, it keeps things in the moment. It makes you appreciate what you've got when you've got it. When I talk to people from outside, and they say, oh, we'll get down there soon, I'm very busy at the moment. I say, you better come soon because it might not be there, and then you'll be pissed off that you missed it, because it's going to be one of those actions that becomes a legend. The number of people who've told me since Claremont Road that they kicked themselves because they were only just across London and they didn't even get down there once. You know, and I just say, shame on you. How can you not have been there when you think what an important event it turned out to be? And this is one of those. And for most of us radical people who've been fighting these battles a long time, it's never been quite this good before, because we are literally calling the shots at this point. If we all chose to pack up and leave tomorrow, which we're free to do, that would be interesting as well. Just to not be there when they arrived, to have vanished. But it is interesting psychologically as to how the mighty are so rattled by us. So rattled. Very interesting. I'm just going to stay until whatever happens, happens. I mean, there's a few things that I have to be away for, like solstice and stuff, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I live here.
And it's good.
It's best ever. Yeah, I don't need to live here. It's voluntary. And although we live like refugees and think like refugees, we're not in fact refugees. Yeah. We're all volunteers. Volunteers to a cause rather than to a place. Because again, none of us have actually got possession orders on this place. Hey Fable. Yeah, I think we're in extremely good shape, and I think people are coming in and really seeing something that no one's seen before. Because in a way, what we're doing here is quite specific to this country and this generation at this time.
One other thing on the local situation. The local kids that have been coming on here, you talk to them much?
Oh yeah, lots. They're
What
fine.
do they think about it?
Well, the thing is with kids, they don't really think. They don't think about things, they just take it's here. In a way, they won't really remember when it wasn't here. And it has no context apart from the fact that it's here for them. It's like they just heard a youth club opened up, so they bowl on down there. But on the whole, they're sorted. They're just kids, and kids are fine. There was 3 of them smashing the bottles in the bottle bank one day with bricks, and Green Dave told them that this wasn't a good idea, and they said, but we're helping you because we're smashing it smaller, so you better fit more in the bin. And he said, yeah, but it's quite tricky when it comes to getting them out of the bin and putting them into the recycling bin. That it's quite difficult if they're all in bits to get out. And they were going, and he wandered off, and they were going, oh, he always moans at us, everything we do. And I said, look, he moans at us too. Okay, that's the way Dave is, because he's very keen on this place, and he hates to see people sort of messing it up. And then a couple of hours, and they were like, oh, they didn't want to hear this, right? And then a couple of hours later, they came into a meeting, and as it happened, David said something rather extreme, and he had like Shane and Jim both going at him, yeah? And he was, oh, like this. I don't think it should be like that, blah, blah, blah. And I just went to these 3 and I said, see, he's like that with all of us, yeah? And then they grinned and I said, you see what I mean? It's like, don't take it personally. But as kids, obviously, they take it personally, and then they know how you can be sure get grown-up attention and wind somebody up, so you go and smash something else, basically. But the best bit was the 2 lads who came in, they're about 17, 18, and they were from the state opposite. And in the first couple of days, they were ripping off the donations thing, trying to walk out with bikes, generally being extremely leery. And at the end of the first week, when the theatre group came up from Devon, from Fairmile Road protest site, they actually ended up going back with them. They went home, got a quilt, and went off back down to Devon with the group, which I thought was fairly amazing. And then I saw them a couple of weeks later, and I said, "Were you the ones that went to Fairmile?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "How was it?" And they grinned and they said, "Oh, it was fine, you know." And they don't have anything to say because they're not articulate in that way, and they're just youth, and they're not really used to being asked how they feel and how they think about things. But you could see that whatever had happened, they'd taken care of it, and they'd come back in one piece, and I wasn't hearing stories about what havoc they created, you know, because they're hardcore urban youth. They're not accustomed to being out in the wildness.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the security at Newbury, you could see they were just urban youth, and they'd been bussed out there, but it was all much too wet, muddy, cold, and generally unruly. all that wild nature. Yeah. I think that's